What does Dark Souls storytelling get right that most games get wrong? Well, everything. Okay, I'm gonna start with a bold claim, but hear me out before you grab those torches and pitchforks. Video games, in all their varied, wonderful, and button-mashing manifestations, generally suck when it comes to storytelling.
This is about Far Cry 3. Storyline, it sucks.
Of course, there are exceptions, but most are ineffective, clumsy, or just unnecessary.
Factions began to squabble over the fortune they'd amassed. They called it the philosopher's legacy.
QuickTime events are frustrating because I hate not really being in control of my player. I want to be the one to disembowel that centaur. Or maybe not. And cutscenes are a great opportunity to do some texting or catch up on House of Cards.
I have no patience for useless things.
But let's look at Dark Souls for a second. The thing that people talk about the most with Dark Souls is its crazy level of difficulty.
You will die over and over and over. Why? Who would want to do that? Why would you want to play that? I want to play the f***ing game and happy times and fun adventures and go on picnics.
But do you know what doesn't get enough credit? Its story. You might be saying, hold up. What story?
There are many different possible interpretations of the story.
At first blush, the plot is threadbare, an age-old tale of a knight trying to lift a curse on a savage land. You know, sword and sorcery stuff. You can play Dark Souls straight through and never realize it goes much deeper than that.
His youngest son, however, Gwendolyn, was born with a strong affinity for the moon.
Okay, take a look at this guy. An enemy archer with just a fancy bit of armor. But if you look closely at the sword that you loot from his body, you learn that his name was Ricard. He's an undead prince with a name and a history and a life that didn't go quite as planned. Clearly, because you're looting his undead corpse. Dark Souls tells its story environmentally through objects, armor, and weapons you find lying around. It lets you discover the story for yourself. And Dark Souls 2, which just came out, continues that trend. Yui Tanemura, co-director of Dark Souls 2, says that he wanted players to collect certain pieces of information so they could try and put the story together and create their own version of the narrative. It was the methodology of storytelling that was super important for him and the team to maintain. This is revolutionary because sadly, most games copy storytelling tools from cinema, novels, or comics. They're not using the gaming environment to do something unique. So how did Dark Souls get it right? First, let's restate the problem. When I'm watching an especially long-winded cut sequence, like the entire second half of Metal Gear Solid 4, or a poorly written one, like the arm wrestling sequence in Shenmue 2, I'm disengaged.
Come on, baby.
Even when it's seamless and beautiful, like meeting Elizabeth in BioShock Infinite, it breaks the interactivity and damages the sensation that I'm actually inside this game world. It forces me to become a viewer, not a player. Check out our episode on immersion if you'd like to know more. On a broader level, some people question whether games should even be telling stories in the first place. Enter the ludology and narratology debate. Those on the ludology side say that story is unnecessary and may distract from play, which is the whole point of games. And they have a point. Tetris, Minecraft, and Go don't need stories to be ridiculously fun and engaging.
That is the coolest malformation ever!
On the other hand, the narratology camp counters that games just haven't figured out how to do stories yet.
I had more fun traveling from quest to quest than I did actually doing the quest.
And there's no question that game narratives have historically been problematic.
Fallout 3 sucks because all you do is talk to people.
Text adventures like Zork told good stories, but you were always battling with the text parser. Likewise, reading the text in Ghost Trick, one of my personal favorites, is interminable, no matter how adorable Missile the Pomeranian is. Then there's cutscenes, little clips that take control away from the player. For every good one, spoiler alert from like 15 years ago, like Eris dying in Final Fantasy, there are millions of bad ones, like every dialogue exchange between Master Chief and Cortana.
Wait.
Welcome home.
To solve that riddle, game designers came up with walkie-talkies, where a player is free to move around while a voiceover narrates.
Yes, hello, we're not stopping. Don't make eye contact, whatever you do.
But as much as I love The Last of Us, it's weird to wait for your character to shut up so you can get back to playing.
Let's keep going.
I tried to catch some fog earlier.
Uh-huh.
I missed.
And all the games that I mentioned are good games with decent stories. But how many times have truly horrible, awful stories gotten in the way of what would otherwise be a fun experience? I'm sure you have a personal example that you can leave in the comments. Games have cribbed these techniques from comics, movies, and pretty much everywhere without developing a narrative voice of their own. It's kind of like the Frankenstein of stories, or Frankenstory, if you will. But now there's signs of hope. Games are finally figuring out how to tell good stories without interrupting themselves. themselves. They do this through diegetic storytelling, a consistent world where events flow from the game world itself.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Is that our sister?
In film, diegetic sound is sound that originates from the world. So when you see a car brake, you hear a scream. In games, diegetic storytelling is story that emerges from the game world. Discovering it is part of the design, and it keeps you fully immersed in the game itself. This means that you can happily have your ludology and eat your narratology too. But a couple things are required. First, game environments have to be believable spaces where things happen as you'd expect.
Come on.
GTA gets around the walkie-talkie problem by having a passenger in the car narrate the story when you drive from place to place, which usually makes sense.
The monster's been exposed.
The hell are you talking about?
Second, the environments are specifically crafted to tell stories. Dark Souls has Sen's Fortress, a booby-trapped temple, which has sparked all kinds of speculation about who constructed it and who Sen actually is. Dear Esther has cave paintings, crumpled letters, and tea candles to guide you through a narrative about a character who may or may not really exist.
There's no evidence to suggest that you're even real.
Third, the objects that you find and interact with have stories of their own.
This is like some conspiracy stuff. Huh.
The food you collect and eat in Skyrim gives you some insight into the gastronomic preferences of the people that live there. And yes, Gone Home does have reading, but it makes sense. Teenage girls in the 80s wrote a lot of notes.
Laserdisc.
Rather than being told a story, you're discovering it for yourself, and that makes it way more personal. Plus, diegetic storytelling has the advantage of letting players choose exactly how much of the story they want to engage with. If you're not that interested in Dark Souls' backstory and you just want to keep from dying, go ahead. If you want to learn everything there is to know about that world, you can do that too.
In New Londo, a group of 3 healers made the difficult decision to flood the city.
So do all games need to be masters of diegetic storytelling? Of course not. I don't need to identify with the Galaga spaceship. But every art form has its own specific capabilities when it comes to storytelling. Novels let you inhabit somebody's mind, theater lets you experience raw, live emotion, and movies let you jump from time, space, and point of view. And video games tell stories as exploration. So while games haven't delivered an Oscar-worthy performance, they don't have to. They'll do something better. So what do you think? Are games finally finding their storytelling voice? Hash it out in the comments, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe. I will see you all next week. Last week, we talked about whether or not you're going to be terrible at virtual reality. Let's see what you had to say. Calvin Spielman says that virtual reality has the potential to put the first person back in first person narratives. Virtual reality has the potential for people to have empathetic experiences with characters that are not themselves. There's a great project that we'll link to in the description that someone put together that allowed a man to see what it's like to be inside a woman's body and a woman to see what it's like to be inside a man's body, which, you know, could be pretty awesome. Dominic Nicholson says that the thing that really concerns him is the omnidirectional controller, and brings up a point that we've had several other viewers mention in past episodes. If you're someone who is in a wheelchair or doesn't have the ability to walk on one of those treadmills, then you're not going to be able to use those games. I mean, I do think this is a big important question. You know, virtual reality obviously requires you to move your head if you're not someone who's able to do that. And if you look at the work of the Able Gamers Foundation, obviously it's a big question for games going forward. So yeah, I think there is an element of social responsibility there that we as a gaming community are going to have to reckon with. But on the other hand, as Ramanujan884 suggested, perhaps virtual reality will open the door for someone who's, say, paralyzed to experience what it's like to use their legs for the first time or to use them again. That, with new advances that we've seen in the field of robotics that allows prosthetics to be controlled by the human brain, certainly opens up new possibilities. We've said this in the past, that all technology is assistive in some way, and I presume that virtual reality won't be much different. Mage of the Year, first of all, congratulations for winning. I hope you do it again next year. I know it's a really competitive award. As far as the salmon bucket helicopter thing, I have no idea. The Nug Show mentions Cardboard Computers Amazing, the Entertainment, which is part of the Kentucky Route Zero franchise. Highly, highly recommended. Opens up whole new possibilities for immersive theater. I'd check it out if you get a chance. Umberto Braccio and Farewell VHS mentioned something that I didn't talk about in the episode, which is the world of adult entertainment and intimate experiences. I tend not to be too alarmist about new technologies, but I do have to admit that that is one area I'm maybe a little bit concerned about. Simply for people who maybe haven't had that first date or that first kiss or whatever that is, if your first encounter with those things are through virtual reality, that absolutely will affect the way you think about these things in the real world. So I do think that this is going to force some very serious conversations amongst game designers and people who create things for virtual reality about what are the responsibilities, particularly when you're dealing with adolescents. So it's a good, big, open question. I try not to be scared about these sorts of things, but you know, I do worry that for my children someday that some of these things, like having human touch and those types of relationships, are going to be opt-in only, which is weird. Hey there, newcomers. First of all, welcome. Second of all, as many of you have noticed, I wear glasses without any lenses in them. And the reason why is because I wear the exact same frames, but with lenses, but there's lots of glare, so that's super distracting. So when we're filming, voila, no glare, no lenses. So I'm not one of those people who just like wears glasses without any lenses in them to be cool or something like that. That'd be pretty dumb. So no need to say anything about it in the comments, hopefully. Anyway, thanks for watching.